Welcome to Lead the Room podcast, where we help those with great ideas and brilliant minds to become amazing leaders and build teams full of purpose, connection, creativity, and courage, transforming people's experience of workplaces and leadership. In 2018, we decided that the leadership playbook we saw around us wasn't working for the needs of our teams and our organisations, or frankly for us. So we ripped it up, built a new one, and watched the incredible impact that came from leading in a completely counter-cultural way. This journey transformed our experience of work, team culture, delivery, and felt so good to us. And our approach has served us and our teams in the good times and in the tough times alike. So now we're here to share our stories, experiences with you, so you can become the leader you want to be, build teams that deliver amazing things in amazing environments, and inspire those around you to do the same. You and your leadership are what our workplace and people desperately need. We'll be laughing, crying, and learning together. Let's get started.
I always bring my core values to feedback conversations. I specifically bring courage, which means that I don't choose comfort over being respectful and honest. Choosing politeness over respect is not respectful. And we love this Brené Brown quote, don't we, Lindsay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's this idea that bringing your core values with you every day, you've got to keep them with you. They're like an accessory, you know, like these amazing earrings I'm wearing today.
Yeah.
Something you've got in your bag, something you've got in your wallet, in your pocket, that you're keeping with you at all times. And that's exactly how values should be viewed, because honestly, they never leave you. And when I used to hear people talking about values, you know, my mind instantly went to those like cringy posters around the organization, or like banners on the internet, you know, intranet pages of like what our organizational values are. And they're always like teamwork, impact, you know, like they mean nothing because they're everybody's values. And so I didn't really think like, well, why do I need to know my values? Like they weren't engaging. They didn't feel personal. And it wasn't until I really started to engage with Brené Brown's work, talking to you, Lindsay, it wasn't until then that I really started to realize the power of knowing my personal values and then placing them at the core of my leadership.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think that it brings it alive, doesn't it? That Brené Brown quote, and makes them feel like actual practical things, which they are. So you might call them core beliefs, guiding principles, foundations, whatever you want to call them. But here at Lead the Room, Briony and I call them values. And in our experience, knowing and understanding your unique personal values, and they are unique. They're not those quotes like Briony says on the wall or on the internet. They are personal values unique to us as leaders, and knowing them is essential from day one. Again, this is not a nice to have. These are essential, because at the end of the day, it's going to make your life easier. Trust us when we tell you this. So when we speak about these values, Briony, we're speaking about it's the things that matter to us the most, right? This is what we're speaking about. And why are they important? Well, they're the things which dictate how you show up every day. So the way that Briony and I are behaving now, the way that we behave as leaders, is all driven by your values. So it's not a surprise. It's not coincidence the way you behave. And equally, particularly as leaders, so decision making is directly influenced by your values, right, Briony? And
yeah, exactly.
And actually, that was quite a bit of a revelation to me, because I did often think, oh, why do people make different decisions? But it is values driven. You will make decisions based on what matters to you most. And when you start realizing that as a leader, you see it in practice, and it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. Because I think when you know your values, you can see why it's driving you to take like a certain action or behave in a certain way in response to something, or to make a certain decision. And it allows you to step back and say, like, is this centering this value like helpful to the situation I'm in or not? But if you don't know them, then like how are you doing that? You're just like being driven by this sort of internal force that you can't really name or describe, but nonetheless it's driving you. And so I always think about it of like those times when you've been in meetings when, you know, you can see two people, like it's getting a bit tense and friction and heated, and you can see two people like in this kind of like face off or whatever. And you made me face off. It's like, because for one or both of them, like something at their core, their values is being like hit on by the other, and they're responding out of that. And this is what I find for myself, like now that I know that what my values are, in those moments I'm able in the moment to step back and be like, this is hitting against my value. Now the choices I have to react are X, Y, or Z. What's going to be the most helpful way to react so that we don't escalate this into a conflict? Or maybe sometimes you actually do want to bring a bit more heat because that's going to help the discussion. But either way, knowing my values gives me a range of choices about how I react in the moment. And I think that is why they're such a powerful like leadership tool. Like I cannot imagine doing this leadership business without them now.
Yeah, it does seem, once you know them and you understand how to use them and how they show up, it is a bit of a, how did I do this without knowing? And actually, it makes your life so much easier. Like we're actually making life difficult for ourselves, not knowing what our values are as leaders. So yeah, it is for us at Lead the Room. It is, before we go into any of our other skills, it is absolutely essential that we start with values.
Yeah. And I think when I think about it more, like for me, you know, one of the big problems that we hear from leaders is like, I'm just like, I'm so maxed out. I've got so like all of my time is back-to-back meetings. I don't know how to discern where I can add value most. I don't know how to, I'm just like on this treadmill. And actually, again, for me, knowing my values allows me to come in each morning and think, how are my values going to show up today? Like, who do I need to prioritize connecting with and how? And that is entirely informed by my values. And it gives my day a whole different feel when I do that to when I don't, because I can tell the days that I don't, because I end the day and I'm like, oh, I've just been on the conveyor belt and things happened to me rather than I did things and I led in the way that was really aligned with my values and I can feel proud and good about.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're listening to this episode and thinking, I have no idea what my values are as a leader, or you might have a little bit of an idea, then we have got an amazing free guide for you that you can download from our website that really helps you kind of get under the surface of what your leadership values are and get you thinking about certain scenarios in which you can lean into them. You can really use them to your advantage. Exactly like Briony said, start your day knowing what your values are, leading with them, and the day will end so much better.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, head over to our website, leadtheroom.co.uk, and you can download that free guide there. And if you're worried, like, I don't even know where to start, well, it's fine, because the guide's going to help you step by step to figure out what your values are. But let's dive into some stories, Lindsay. Like, tell us a story about your values.
Yeah, obviously it wouldn't be a podcast without one of our stories. So one of my core values, and I'd say it's been consistent, and that's an important point, Briony, isn't it? That values don't have to necessarily be consistent. They can change throughout your life, and they will. However, one definitely consistent one for me, and I can see it kind of throughout my childhood and into my leadership journey, is generosity. And that, as a leader, comes in many kind of forms. And I think particularly kind of generosity with my time, which can definitely be a challenge. And time and knowledge, I think, are one of my two key things in terms of a leader being generous with.
And you are really generous with both of those things.
So I try to be. I hate, and again, this is definitely, the reason I hate it is because it definitely triggers a value when people hold that information, when people are not generous with their knowledge. No, those people that are like, oh, the knowledge is all mine and they're not giving it to you. Like, I can feel that kind of intense, because a core value of mine is generosity, right? But I can think of like one situation in particular where I couldn't be the leader I wanted to be because I was surrounded by other people who did not share my core values of or my core value of generosity. And I was basically surrounded by people who were not generous, particularly with their time. And at the time, these were people, kind of more senior people to me, who on a daily basis, I'd say, I was kind of made to feel that they didn't have time for me. I was very much a nuisance. I was kind of an inconvenience on their time. They were definitely the people who would cancel the one-to-ones. You'd pass them in the hallway and be like, oh, we must catch up, Lindsay. Okay, well, I've got quite a lot to share with you. I need your help, but you haven't got the time for me. Now, they did have the time. Everyone has got time for their members of staff. Everyone has time to understand what people are doing. That is a choice, right? And that is a choice, a decision that is driven by your values. So for them, and it took me time to understand the reason that they weren't prioritizing me. It wasn't because of me as a person. Like, it wasn't like, oh, God, we don't want to spend time with her. It was because it wasn't a value of theirs. Like, being generous with their time, making the time for me, sitting down, having that cup of tea and a biscuit, it just didn't matter to them, right? But it mattered so much to me. And I always thought, if only they took time to understand who I was, not just as a member of their team who needed meetings, that needed help, but if they really understood who I was and what motivated me, what mattered to me, they didn't need to match my generosity, because it's not about matching values like for like. It's about understanding, right, my value. And if they don't honor that even to the slightest, they're not going to get anything out of me as an employee. So the impact of that was, I was like, right, screw this. Like, if they haven't got time for me, I'm going to give them 50% of what I have to offer.
And that's how when your values get like impacted in that way, and that's how it plays out, right? And why knowing your values is so important, because like you say, like you've got the meeting with them, because generosity is so important to you. The fact that they cancel it and they aren't generous to you with their time, like, that's one cut, right? So it gets moved to the next week, then it gets moved again, then it gets moved again, then you have it finally, and it's only 20 minutes because they've got another thing. And all the while, this is just like hitting up time and again against your value. And then you get into this like that, well, this is what happens for me. Like, I get in this cycle of like, well, if they're not going to do this for me, then I'm not going to do this for them. And you can do, right, but then by knowing my values, I can actually step back and try. Like, let's be honest, it doesn't happen all the time. Definitely get caught up in this. You can try and think about, well, what is the most helpful way? Like, how can I stop this value being triggered? Or like, I notice that this is happening, what am I going to do about it that's actually going to help me put my boundaries in, but also, stop this value getting impacted in the same way, or stop allowing this person to have this impact on me, Because you can't control others' behaviors, you can only control yourself. But I think this is like, your story is a really good illustration of what, of why, knowing why you're getting wound up by someone and what it's hitting up against, what values it's hitting up against, is really important.
And I think also in that situation, going through a range of emotions. So absolutely, I was of the opinion that, gosh, these people are more senior to me. I am that nuisance. They don't want to spend time with me. It was upsetting because I'm thinking, they don't value me. Like, they don't see me as kind of a value to their team. They obviously don't think I have any potential. That, gosh, I'm just a number on a spreadsheet to them. Like, there's nothing, they don't see the value. So I was really upset to begin with. The more it went on and the more I kind of understood, and the whole kind of what this is about, and understand, well, this is clearly not a value of theirs, I got angry. And then I went into that mode of, right, like my motivation went, I just couldn't be bothered, which again frustrated me because I was like, that's not me as a person. They're turning me into something that I'm not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those things, and you just think, oh, this is really uncomfortable.
But imagine the difference it would have made if that leader at the start of getting to know you had said, like, what are the things that you care most
Yeah.
about? Like, what are your values? What are the things that drive you? And you were able to say, you know what, generosity is really important for me. And the
Yeah.
way this shows up for me at work is I really try and give people a lot of my time and energy. So
Yeah.
I can become quite demotivated when I'm working with people if they don't show that back.
Yeah.
Because then as a leader, that person, should have been able to then prioritize the time with you, or at least offer you a different explanation.
Yeah.
And in a way, when they like, 'cause, things come up, right? Leaders, senior leaders, also humans,
Yeah.
busy diaries or whatever, they would have been able to just handle that situation in a completely different way, in a connected
Yeah.
way, rather than it hitting up against your value. And so I think, again, you just bring out a really good point for like all of the leaders listening to the podcast. It's like, this is why knowing your values, but also knowing your staff's values is really important, because it can be a game changer for how you connect with and engage with your staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that connection leading to the results. So probably that year, our team performed like average, probably mediocre.
Yeah.
Had they maybe given me 30 minutes of their week, of their day, in a whole week, 30 minutes a week, that's all I was asking for.
Yeah.
The productivity, the impact, the results could have been starkly different. But
Yeah,
they weren't,
exactly.
right? So it
Yeah.
is directly linked to the results. So yeah, I think that's from what could have been perceived, I think, Bryony, as oh, she's just a bit upset that people aren't spending time with her. That's a little bit, she's having a bit of an emotional reaction, to know that is directly related to the results of your team. Like,
Yeah.
take note, do something different. Yeah.
Take note. You
Yeah.
heard it from Lindsay.
Well, you've lost your chance now. That's it. It's over. I'm done. Crying in the corner. No, I'm not. I'm over it now. I've got boundaries. I've got boundaries now. Bryony, what about you? Share, story from you.
So one of my values is coalition, and the story
Love
that I was
that.
thinking about is so in the job I'm in now, I'm like responsible for a lot of different things, but I don't own really any of the resources, any of the levers of power to get the thing done. Working over like really quite a distributed way, so we're not all based in the same place.
Mhm.
And so all I've got is my influence. And in some ways, like, this is an ideal job for me and really energizing, because it is all about, like, to get things done, to deliver amazing results, you have to build coalitions. Like, you have to build that network and that team of people that are going to help you deliver the project. You have to like get them on board, connect with them, understand their motivations, all of that stuff, which I really like. And for me, I just find it really energizing.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking of jobs that I'm going for, I will quite often look at like, well, often when I think of the jobs that I've done and the ones I'm going for, they've got this theme of like coalition, where the leadership skill I really need to bring is about building teams across boundaries. Like, I don't know, stripy teams is the
Yeah.
buzzword that
Oh,
people would use.
okay.
Yeah. Oh, but we don't like a buzzword, but like those multidisciplinary
Yeah.
teams with different skills that are not just in your immediate area of control, but you
Mhm.
need to bring in, so and so and someone from over
You're
here and that
so
kind of
good at
thing.
that. You are so, so good at
Oh,
that.
well, good to hear.
You are.
But then the way it shows up then, when, like, on the flip side, is that when I see other leaders not leading in this way, like, they've got their little empires, and every
Oh,
workplace has these people, don't they? Where
the
you look on,
fiefdoms.
you're like, yeah, they're just building their little silos and their empires, and it's all about like, who and that's how you get promoted. I just it does something in my core. Like it makes me feel sick. Like sometimes when I see it, like I have a physical reaction.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I know it's like a value for me, because like this
You
is an
feel it.
extreme reaction. Not everybody sees these things and has that kind of like gut feeling.
Yeah.
And it can change. Like I can become like really quite disruptive with those people.
Okay.
So, or like a bit naughty, like, so I'll try and like subvert the thing, to try and get them on board. But I'm just being honest, right? Because this is what happens when your values get impacted, when these things hit, when behaviors of other people hit up against things that are so important to you. And so what I've learned is I'm really good now at noticing it when it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting better, back to your kind of point of like growth mindset, and we'll come to walk to the week in a bit. But I'm getting better at being able to manage myself and manage that value of coalition being impacted when I see it playing out. And the most effective thing I can do is just not react in the moment. Just be like, okay, this is happening. I'm feeling it. And I'm going to tap out for half an hour and take a walk. Or, you know what I mean? And that's like, that's where I've got to on that. And we'll come back later.
How open, Briony, are you, or how kind of upfront with people are you about coalition being such a strong value of yours? How?
So I think, like, for my immediate team, like the first thing I do when I come into a role is quite often I'll share my values and a bit about why, because I think that's really important. Like it helps staff understand immediately, like, oh, this is what this person is about. Like, and I tell them, like, the good side and the dark side, because it's also showcasing that kind of like that vulnerability, that authenticity, which is both of which are really important for building trust. So I'm quite upfront with some people, I would say. But then, other people, if I'm being honest, like I am more guarded, because what you don't want is for these things to be weaponized against you, right? And that is what sometimes, like in these, this really has only happened, maybe I can think of like one time. But in cultures which aren't always positive in workplaces, which we know that they're not, like I do think you need to be careful, don't you? And like to your point on boundaries, like you do need to judge, like this can be quite personal information. Like, do I want to share this? But for me, a safer way or a less risky way, because we talked last week about the risk in leading in this way, didn't we? A less risky way of sharing my values is by just how, like, if I'm framing a new project, just saying, to deliver this thing successfully, and this is what success, like the thing that we all agreed to, we're going to have to work as like a team across boundaries. And so I'll bring the coalition language in without saying like, and this is a core value for me, because that it's not actually relevant. It's my coalition value is going to be really helpful to the success of the project, but not everybody needs to know that that is my core value, right? I can just harness it and bring it into the language I use, the behaviors I show up with, and being really intentional with all of that.
And like we say, it is driving your actions, whether you realize it or not. And the more you realize it, the better, because like you say, they're gonna get crossed. You cannot be in a situation at work in your whole career that someone is not going to cross your values and you're not going to have a reaction. So if you're listening now thinking, gosh, something happened to me at work today and I had that reaction, why was that? Go and do our exercise. Go and find out what your values are and think, and now I know. Because it's so powerful, so powerful. Okay.
So like Lindsay said, we've got this amazing free resource on our website, this Know Your Values workbook, and like a podcast that goes with it that's going to walk you through it every step of the way, just like we're doing now. And so you can download it. And so, go and have a look at that, try it out and get to know your values. And we'd love you to tell us, like, send us a DM on Instagram at Lead the Room Coaching, or send us an email to hello@leadtheroom.co.uk and let us know how you got on with it. Like, what did you find out about yourself? We really look forward to hearing.
Yeah. And I think like it's not the easiest of thing to do. I remember the first time I did it thinking, oh, this feels really awkward. And now I'm like really embarrassed. I don't know what my core values are. What are they? But actually we've put some examples in there, some like questions to kind of guide you through it, because it's not just picking words off a list. It's much more than that. And hopefully you've articulated that in today's episode. But before that, Briony, we got some tips and ideas that people can experiment with this week. What have we got? Kick us off with one.
So I think the first one is to think about your week and think about the thing in your week that you've been dreading, because I guarantee you, when you look, you will find the thing you already know, right? I'm talking and you already know that thing that you're dreading. Now, think about, having done the values exercise, like how could bringing one of my core values help me with the thing I'm dreading? Like one of my other core values is courage. And so quite often, like if I'm dreading a meeting or dreading some feedback, I can like just give myself a courage up pep talk, and it helps me approach that thing I've been dreading much better, with a much more positive mindset. And really helpful. So that's the first thing, is have a look at the thing you're dreading and see if one of your values can help you.
Cool. That sounds good. And I'm already thinking of what my meeting is this week that I'm dreading.
Right?
So yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. We've all got them, probably multiples, but that's bad that we have them, isn't it? Yeah, maybe that's another podcast. And the second thing you might want to think about trying is sharing one of your values with your team. So this would look like perhaps like, and again, this will be happening loads. So thinking about when you're discussing maybe a really sticky, tricky problem with them, like you can be playful with it and kind of say, look, one of my core values is whatever is X. So I see the solution to this problem in this way. To really explain the kind of perspective you're coming at it from. Or when you're sharing some difficult news, you could absolutely say like, look, one of my core values is whatever. So I'm finding this specific thing hard. And expect you're finding it hard in your own way too. So it's not about imposing your values on others and thinking they're feeling or doing the same. It's explaining you're coming at something from a particular angle, perspective, because of your core value. And it's a really good way of, it's not a cringy way, because we're not asking you to turn up to your meetings with a list of your values and put it down on a post-it. Like, please don't do that. We don't want you to do that. But this is a really hopefully a really practical, practical but helpful. Like this should, like we've said from the beginning of this episode, it's about making your life as a leader easier.
And I love it because when you're doing that, the value sits under our purpose skill because it's linked to delivery, but you're also really using your values to build connection with people, right? Like in that example. So love that. And then the final one that we have is back to a bit on those opportunities that we talked about at the end of last week's podcast. It's like someone comes up to you, you know that your time is full, you're probably over capacity, and someone comes up to you and offers you an opportunity, and it can be really hard to say no to those things. Like, I'm definitely a recovering people pleaser. I just want to be helpful, just want to say yes. Really hard to say no. So I think about, like, actually, as we said last time, like, is this an opportunity for me or for you? And then think about, well, how can your values help you say no or turn someone down on an offer that you've been given that actually really isn't for you right now? It's not aligned with your core values. It's not aligned with your purpose as a team. It's not aligned with your growth ambitions for your leadership and for your career. Think about how you can use one of your values to help you with that.
Yeah, definitely. So it's again back to that intentionality, isn't it? Being really intentional with what you're doing, guided by your values. So we hope there's some really helpful stuff in there for you, and then it's resonated with you and you've thought, yeah, that's exactly what I'm experiencing, or something similar. So every week we will always end our episodes with our feature, Walk the Week, to really make you feel like you're on your week with us, celebrate learn and grow together as a community of leaders. So Bryony, what are you celebrating this week?
So I'm celebrating this week. It's like I've had a massive calendar win.
Mm.
Sounds dry and boring, but no, let me tell you. I blocked out a whole day to do some really like some big thinking to map out this big new project that I've got going on. And I was really proud of myself because I prioritize, like this was one of my goals
Mm-hmm.
for myself, being able to do this, not someone else's goal, my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I blocked out the whole day, which is again, is quite hard to do when you're quite
Yeah.
a busy like senior leader. So I was really proud that I did that. And knowing that I've done it like and had all that time planning, it's going to make my life easier. It's going to make my team's life easier. It's going to really help us be clear on our purpose as we get into this project. So all good things. What about you?
Fabulous. Well done. I had a really wonderful moment where, well, it started off not so, it could have gone either way, but again, I read the room, I used my skills as my emotional intelligence skills and thought, no, this could work. And I challenged another leader to maybe to approach a problem in a different way because I could see that they were just
Okay.
having a bit of an issue with it. And I like volunteered to support them through it. They were reluctant to begin with, but actually it didn't take too long for them to realize, okay, this might have legs, and actually had a really, I mean, it's not finished yet, but I can see them, they've quickly saw the benefits and the kind of quick outputs that they're having already. So yeah, definitely a
Really good.
win there. What about learning?
Really.
What have you been learning, B?
So this week I also another sort of calendar win actually. Like
Hmm.
I really intentionally made some time to connect with like a subject matter expert, again linked to this project to really understand like the technical details of the project and the technical aspects in a
Mhm.
way that's going to help my own learning and development as a leader and be like credible in my organization, but also it's going to help me like make sure that the project is shaped in the right way and driven by the technical advice that I've been given. So
Mm.
it's easy not to do these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
But so the learning is like actually I made time for some actual learning in a way that like, oh, I left with a whole bunch of new things I didn't know before. Great. And the learning is like prioritizing having those conversations.
Fab. So this week, I don't know what had kind of possessed me, but I really put myself out of my comfort zone and I did volunteer. So it's not someone coming to flatter me. I volunteered to get involved in something at work, which I know absolutely nothing about. But I
Okay.
was like, I need something that I know nothing about. And I'm not going into as an expert or anything. So I mean, I already feel slightly sick about the first meetings because I'm like, I know absolutely nothing. But again, you've got to challenge yourself. So that's my kind of mini challenge of the week. It's not going to consume too much time, but yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Well done. Getting out of the comfort zone can be hard. So well done.
Yeah, and that was
Um,
that's a big one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that is a big one. And I think mine is kind of related to that, like about that comfort zone. So I've been really thinking about where I need to ask for help more. And I find this
Mm,
really hard because I just like I'm very independent and capable and I like to just be able to do things.
yeah.
Really, if I'm being honest, I like to be able to do everything myself. But actually, Bryony, there are some things that as amazing as you are, you cannot do and you need to ask for help. And so I've been challenging myself to really identify like 3 pain points that I've got with at work that actually someone I could really do with some help with, and then to go and ask for the help.
Yeah.
So that's my one for growing. What about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. So I think linked to my learning one, I think my I do feel that it was a kind of a bit of a plateau, possibly like, so I recently had maternity leave. I think kind of gearing up to maternity leave, I wasn't in a grow state of mind
Yes.
because, well,
Oh
for
yeah,
obvious
yeah.
reasons.
Or growing in one way but not another.
Growing up, yes, blossoming. Um, and yeah, I've now got space to grow again. Yeah, no, I definitely don't. I've got room to grow. And I think that, but again, with boundaries, growth with boundaries is kind of my mantra for this second half of the year.
I love that. And I reckon that's going to resonate with loads of people because I think you're completely right. Like coming back from parental leave, is a real moment, isn't it? Where you don't want to stagnate, but thinking about, well, how do you kick into that growth mindset? How do you re-energize yourself is really tough. So good for you. And I love the mantra.
Absolutely. Fab. So as ever, we would love to hear about how you're getting on and covering your values, how you got on with our exercise. Feedback on it would be wonderful as well. Head to our website, download your guide there for free, and then join us in the comments on Instagram, on YouTube. Send us a DM to share your walk the week. Connect, ask us any questions. We just absolutely love to hear from you on all channels. So and hear what you've been taking away from our conversation today and our other episodes.
Yeah, can't wait to see you next week. We've got another good one for you. All right, bye.
Bye.
A team full of purpose and results, people who are buzzing with ideas and the courage to try them out, and a place where you and the team can't wait for the weekly meeting. By listening to this episode, you are building your skills to become the leader that can make all this and more happen. But we want to hear from you. Tag us in your stories, send us a DM about your walk the week on Instagram so we can learn what's resonating with you most. And if you're up for helping us out and taking a moment to rate and review the podcast, send us a screenshot to hello@leadtheroom.co.uk so we can send you our 90-day leadership refresh as a thank you. Keep experimenting, and we can't wait to see you next week.